Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really excited for you to get to know today Brie Chrisman. Welcome, Brie. Glad you're here.
Thanks so much, Gordon. I'm happy to be here.
As I start with everyone, tell folks a little more about yourself and how you landed where you've landed.
Yeah, thank you. So I, again, am Brie Chrisman. I am the CEO and founder of BosCo. We are an operations agency that supports mental health practices for their operations and back-end support, really so that they can grow and scale in the way that they want to without burning out, without overloading themselves, and really creating the life that they want to. I started the company about 5 years ago as just a general operations assistant company that worked with all different industries. It was the middle of the first year of the pandemic. And I decided after getting laid off from my job that I could do all the things I'm really good at for myself instead of for someone else's financial gain
All right.
and professional gain. So I started in July of 2020, and one of my first clients was a therapist, a wonderful person I still work with and I'm really good friends with today in New York City. And within a couple years, 90% of our clientele was therapists, and we decided as a company that we loved the mental health industry. We loved supporting mental health therapists. And so we decided at the end of, I think, 2023 to go all in on mental health. And since then, we have been able to provide education, free resources, support from operations, day-to-day management, all the way up to fractional practice directing with our clients. And we've really been able to make an impact by helping our clients make an impact in their clients' lives.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the whole operation side of things people don't really think about. And
Yeah.
one of the things I know that we chatted about before we started that I think is going to be really interesting to the folks listening is just ways to increase your profit without increasing your work, because that's something that I think all of us recognize, especially if you've been in practice for a while, is that you can reach a kind of a point to where you just can't do anymore.
Yeah.
And just recognizing, okay, but I would like to earn more, but I just can't do anymore. So
Yeah.
tell us kind of what you've kind of come up with and the things that you have learned and share with other therapists.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times when we think about practice growth, the first thing that people are going to tell you is you need to add more clinicians, you need to add more clients, you need to do marketing and do Google ads and all of this stuff. Well, the problem with that is that you are one person, you have 24 hours in a day. You do not want to be seeing 25, 30, 35, 40 clients in a week because that's crazy. It's just not sustainable for you, for the people around you. People don't have huge budgets for Google ads. There's people don't want to market. You have enough to do as a practice owner. Whether you're a solo practitioner or a group practice owner, you have way too much on your plate. You don't need to be adding more. So something that we always try to remind people is that profit equals revenue minus expenses. So there's two parts to that. So when you're looking at marketing, when you're looking at adding clinicians or adding clients onto your caseload, that's all from the revenue side, that revenue generating side, but that's also generating more to put on your plate. And so we look
Hmm.
at the expenses side and say, okay, how can we streamline things? How can we help with not only your financial bottom line, but also your time bottom line? And also, we take into consideration executive function, decision fatigue, things like that, and really focusing on how you can best use your brain. Because as we know, as a business owner, you wear 70 different hats. And
Right.
in really specifically, we're mental health therapists, you are holding so much for your clients. And there's so much more of an emotional piece there that you don't, at the end of the day, if you have a couple hard sessions, one hard session, even just like 5 or 6 easy sessions, it's still so much that you're having to process. And having all of that business owner things that you have to do on top of that can be so strenuous. So we look at a lot of times we'll do an expense audit and look at your bottom line and see what can we cut out? What can we, if there's software that you're not using, or if there's software you're paying too much for, or things that we can shift to a different model, looking at, how you're spending your day. Are you jumping from client to notes to social media posts to QuickBooks to emails back and forth, or are you actually budgeting your day and making sure that you are really intentional with your time? And then really looking at streamlining. There's not, you can automate a lot of things in a business. You can't automate as much in a healthcare business because of PHI, but there are ways that you can streamline your processes like email templates. My favorite example to give is, say you have leads coming in from Psych Today, My Wellbeing, ZocDoc, wherever, and you are sending an email. It takes you 5 minutes to write, like, thank you for responding. This is, the back and forth of scheduling, whatever. If you write one of those emails per day, say 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, that's almost 21 hours of your time writing that single email. That is insane. And so, like, just if you think of it that way, because if you're like, oh, well, it takes me 5 minutes, it's not a big deal. But 5 minutes times 5 minutes, or 5 minutes plus 5 minutes plus 5 minutes is a lot of time. And so even just creating a template for that email that drops it down to 30 seconds, you think of like 21 hours times whatever your hourly rate is, that's a lot of money left on the table. That's a lot of money that, that time could be spent doing something else. And really for that one email, we'll stay on the same analogy, same example. If you were doing something completely different and then you saw the email pop up on a tab on your browser and you switched to that, you are creating decision fatigue for yourself. So, think of, as I'm sure I'm telling everyone that's listening, things that they probably tell their clients all the time, but I know that it's really good to hear it from somebody else too.
Right.
But you have, a decision pitcher, and each decision you make, you get less and less and less. And so by the end of the day, if your pitcher is empty and you need to figure out what's for dinner, that's when, you're like, I just can't anymore. So think about when say you're doing notes and you see that email come in and you want to jump on it right away. Well, switching from a notes brain wave to writing an email, you're deciding to switch to that tab, deciding what to write, deciding when to send it, going back, trying to get back into that mindset of notes. That messes with your executive function so much. And so being able to really utilize a template or utilize that time blocking or task batching, things like that, really can really help with lowering expenses. And it doesn't seem like that. You think you're listening to this and you're thinking, Brie, that doesn't lower my expenses, but it does, because then you're able to more efficiently do things, and then you're able to stay in the right mindset and all of that, the psychological piece of that, which I don't have to explain to the people listening.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's one of the things that I think is a low-hanging fruit for a lot of people, and just being able to increase their lower their costs. Really, increasing your revenue. We're not talking about that, but just lowering your costs. If you have to give up, a session with a client to do a lot of those admin tasks, that's a cost for you.
Yes,
Cost of your time,
absolutely.
cost of your money, those kinds of things. And so I think it's important to kind of think about it in that way.
Yeah, it really is. You're right, Gordon. And it's something that if you have, like, say you don't have a team or you have one or two clinicians, you don't have anybody on the admin business side, and you're like, I don't really need to, I can handle all of it. Think of it as like in terms of hourly tasks, an hourly rate. So if it's a $200 task versus a $20 task, if it's a $20 task that you are doing when you could be doing a $200 session, you should not be doing that task. And it may seem like an added expense to bring on an admin. And, yes, it is. However, it's also a gain for you. And the return on investment is so much greater if you can pass those tasks off to someone, that you can focus your brain on what you do best, which is the clinical side. Whether it's, if you're a large group practice, small group practice, whatever, if you're supervising, if you're leading a team, you can focus on those things. And the little tasks, the $20 tasks, the $10 tasks, whatever, those can be passed off to somebody else. It frees up your brain. It just creates a really great return on investment, which will eventually increase your profit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that I've been working on, or reworking or rewriting my private practice startup guide. And one of the things that I think is an important mindset thing is just to think about things in terms of the return on the investment.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think, based on, what you're talking about is to ask yourself, okay, what is the return I'm getting on either this task or what I'm spending money on? All of those kinds of things to really kind of do that inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so important. And a lot of times we tell people to do a time audit or a task
Mm-hmm.
audit, which I'm sure you've recommended to people a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
listening have recommended to their clients. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be exact, but just having like a I have a notebook right here. I actually have on a notepad right here, it says things to pass to Danny, who is my assistant. And so I have
Mm-hmm.
this sitting on my desk right now. I made it this morning because we had a meeting yesterday and she's like, I feel like there's so many things you're doing that should be my job. So I need you to write them
Mm-hmm.
down so we can pass them off. And she's
Right.
amazing. So she knows me and she's like, no, Brie, this is my job. You have to give them to me, which
Right.
delegation
Right.
is hard. It is hard,
Yes.
speaking from
Yes.
experience. And I'm
Uh-huh.
good on my soapbox about delegation, but it's still difficult for me too. But, if you just write things down as you're doing them, if you intentionally have it in the back of your head of this isn't a task I should be doing. This is like writing an email, you're like, I should not be doing this. This is not what I want to be spending my time on right now. That should immediately go on your list
Right.
100% of the
Right.
time.
Yeah. Looking at the energy drainers. Um,
Yes.
I
Yes. And
think, yeah. So
going through that, Gay Hendricks and the Big Leap, have you read that book?
I'm familiar with it. I've not read it
Okay.
yet. Yeah.
So I pick out different things in his ideologies and everything, but it's the difference between zone of genius, zone of excellence, things like that. And if it's not in your zone of excellence or zone of genius, you should not be doing it. If it's in your
Mm-hmm.
zone of excellence and you're just really good at it, if it doesn't take your specific brain, then you can easily teach it to someone else and delegate it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when standard operating procedures and task audits, things like that come into play because, and this could be a whole different podcast episode, but
Mm-hmm.
when you are bringing on, say, your group practice owner and you're bringing on clinicians, if you have policies and procedures in place, if you have step-by-step instructions in place, if you have standardized ways of doing things, you can really figure out a way to make sure that one, the standard of care is excellent across the board, no matter who is seeing them, whether who they're
Mm-hmm.
talking to, whether it's an admin person, a different clinician, yourself. But as any group practice owner knows, it's way cheaper to retain clinicians than it is to constantly hire because
Mm-hmm.
it can take up to 6 months or more to get a full-time caseload for that person. And so, it's a unique way of bringing people on because like I can bring someone on and once they hit a certain number of hours a week, I can just give them more work and they're making money for me. But obviously it's not the same in the mental health space. You have to make sure that you're vibing with a client. You have to make sure that your client load matches, your interests, your expertise, and it has to be a good match. And so it does take longer. And anytime that we can retain and create those standardized procedures, and standard does not mean boring. It can be
Mm-hmm.
very unique and can be very your feel. But anytime we can do that, again, it goes back to that return on investment.
Yeah. 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 One thing I was thinking of as you were saying all of that, Bree, is, the part of the problem with delegating for a lot of people, or what they think is a problem, is having different tasks that we've done as practice owners for several years. And we have just in our mind how to do it, and we know how to do it. And to explain it or teach it to someone else just seems kind of a big task. So
Yeah.
what advice do you have, or what ideas do you have about that particular problem?
Yeah, that is not just a therapist issue. That is a business owner or leader issue in any business anywhere. Anyone
Right.
who's ever had to learn to delegate is dealing with that. So you're not alone, is what I'm saying. What I typically try to do is when I'm trying to teach someone, I use a tool called Loom. It is
Mm-hmm.
a video, I'm sure you've used it, Gordon, but for
Mm-hmm.
anyone who doesn't know, it's a It's a video screen recording tool where you can record your screen and record your voice or yourself as like a voiceover, which is great.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, there's some limits because you can't, go into your EHR and have all of your client list and everything on there because it is not HIPAA compliant. But for admin things, for business related things, it's really, really great. For the stuff that has PHI, I do use like a Google Doc if you have, or you're, a BAA signed with Google Workspace or whatever, software you're using. But when I'm doing the task next, it takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes extra for me to write it down as I'm doing it. Because then it doesn't feel like this big, huge task. It feels like, okay, well, I'm already doing it. Let me just take a couple extra minutes and write it down. Because then you're guaranteed to not miss a step because you're actively doing it. You're not just trying to brainstorm and remember all the steps. And you're, especially if you're doing that Loom video, you can talk over it and be like, this is how you do it, but also this is a hint and a hot tip that I've learned. And so you can really bring your feel, because if you like to do it a very specific way, that's a really great way to add that in there because you're already doing it and you're already in the process of doing it. So it takes way less time. It feels way less overwhelming. But if you have your little, pad of paper and you know what to delegate, then that is your list of things that you need to create your standard operating procedures for. And I would
Right.
argue that even if you're not delegating a task, create a standard operating procedure for yourself, because on those days when you are burned out, you are overwhelmed, you have all of the brain fog and none of the executive function, you can just pull up that task you've done 100 times. I mean, I feel like we've all done it. We've looked and we're like, where do I start? I don't remember. Even though we've done it
Right.
so many times. And so just pulling up a step by step, you can get that task done without using as much brain power. And so that's really
Right.
great for days that you're having like a really intense caseload, or, you're just having a really crap day. You didn't get a lot of sleep, things like that.
Right, right. You mentioned the Loom app. The other thing that's nice about it is just you can record your screen as you're doing things.
Yes.
And so that's a really, really cool feature. You know what? One of the things too, I know I've done that in the past. I know, I think, okay, I need to teach this to somebody else. And thinking, okay, I don't even know where to start writing this
Yeah.
down. But like you said, is to be able to just start doing the task and then narrate
Hmm.
it as you go
Yes.
through it. And one of the benefits too of doing that is a lot of times if you do that, you figure out, oh, here's a shortcut that I didn't even think about, or
Yeah.
here's a thing that I could be doing differently,
Yeah.
as you explain it to people and
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah. Because you're saying it out loud. The amount of times my team knows, and I get made fun of all the time in, a very kind way, but they're always like, my videos are hilarious because I just ramble and
Hmm.
it's just like, oh, well, let's just do this. And it's not a very like, this is a Loom video on XYZ and we will be going through these processes. It is not
Yeah,
corporate. It's like, hey, what's up? This is what we're doing.
yeah,
And the amount of times also that I'm like, oh, wait, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Hold on. And I like pause it and figure it out.
uh,
And then I
uh-huh,
restart
yeah,
recording the video. It's like, okay, let's regroup and do this again.
right,
So
right,
it's nice because it captures, it captures that. And that's just how we roll at BosCo. We're very, we're very laid back. We're very, if it we're just very personality human driven, and that's just how
right,
I operate. And but they get a lot of extra content out of my videos because I am, you know showing them the process, but also talking through it in a way of like, oh, I've actually figured out you can do XYZ. And you get that extra information where you don't get that from like a step-by-step document, like written document.
right, right. And the other thing too that happens is a lot of times they'll watch it and then they'll have questions like, well, why are you help me understand why you're doing it that way. It seems like it'd be make more sense to do it this way. And
Hmm.
they actually come up with a better way of doing things. And
Yeah, which
so,
is great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I think that yeah, that's such a good point is that I think the trouble with delegating is we have this myth that we tell ourselves that we can do it the best.
Yes.
But in reality, a lot of other people can do it probably better and
Yeah.
just as good.
Yeah. We're not always the smartest person in the room. Everyone's brains work differently, which is the beauty of running a business, being in the world.
Hmm.
And I really find that when you can get other people's perspectives, it's so much, it's so great. And if they can find a better process, great. I would love that. And it's the beauty of coming together and making, that's how you can really find success. I will say
Mm-hmm.
though, too, if you are, using your Loom videos or whatever as training, if it is a really like tried and true process, you've got it down, it's great. If somebody asks you how to do something, you can just be like, go watch the Loom video. If you have
Mm-hmm.
questions after that, let me know. But that way, if you have a, database, even if it's just a
Right.
spreadsheet of
Right.
links of this is how you do these things, they can go to that without bugging you, and you don't have to stop doing what you're doing and go and explain it to them because you've already done it. So if you, especially for practice owners that are growing a group and growing groups
Mm-hmm.
group
Mm-hmm.
practice and hiring rapidly, think of
Mm-hmm.
how many times you have to explain the same process over and over and over again. You do it once, you don't have to do it again unless you change the process. And so
Yeah.
that cuts down so much time. It also provides a really great onboarding experience for clinicians. And there are studies that show that the better the onboarding experience, the longer they stay. And
Mm-hmm.
that, again, return on investment.
You're right. Right. Yeah. So, Bree, I know we need to be aware of our time, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious as to other areas that maybe people don't think about besides just kind of how they're delegating and automation. What are some other ways that people can really kind of increase their profit that they might not be thinking about?
Yeah, I would say client onboarding is a one of the top processes that we look at first and foremost when we come into a new client's practice. That's the first thing we look at because there are so many times where from lead, when a first lead comes in, or even when someone's looking at your website, looking at your Site Today profile, we want to make sure that the barrier to entry is as low as possible. So that way you can grab those people that are searching at 1 a.m. that are having, a kind of a spiral moment. Because how
Mm-hmm.
many times have therapists, anyone listening, you have some lead come in from Site Today or somewhere at 2 a.m. and then you reach 2 a.m. on like a Saturday and you reach out to them Monday and they're like, nope, I'm good, thanks. Because
Mm-hmm.
then they get some sleep and they're like, oh, okay, I'm fine. But then guaranteed in a week, they're going to be spiraling again. And I
Mm-hmm.
can say that because I've been that person. I've
Yeah.
been that, that,
Right.
that client.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to make sure that everything is optimized from the marketing standpoint. But once they get into your orbit, once they get into your funnel. And it sounds kind of crass when you think of mental health clients as a sales funnel, but at the end of the day, it is. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can separate the emotion and the personable part of it and really look at the business side, it is a lead funnel and sales funnel. And so getting those, that's the best way to think about it when you're trying to streamline it. And so maybe that looks like, okay, making sure that your online scheduling is turned on for consults. And so they can go through the process, reach out to you, get an automated email or something like that, and automatically book a consult. So that way you
Mm-hmm.
capture them in that moment, making sure they get to the consult, making sure you're sending follow-up emails or confirmation emails. If they're, and this is kind of going back to that standardized process too, if you have it written down and every client gets the same process, you can really see where clients are falling off. So if they're falling off
Mm-hmm.
after the lead inquiry, okay, do we need to send more follow-ups? If they're falling
Mm-hmm.
off after the consult, let's look at that consult. What's being said? Do we need to do some role playing? Do we need to have a script for that? If they're falling off before their first appointment, they never filled out paperwork. Okay, again, do we need to send more follow-ups? Do we need to make it a little bit clearer on what the process is, what to expect? And so doing that and having that standardized process will get people through your door and get through the process faster. And it will be really, there won't be any barriers to entry except maybe they're just not a good fit for you. But if
Mm-hmm.
that's the only barrier to entry, you will be able to onboard clients a lot faster. You'll be able to onboard a lot more clients as long as you're hitting, the audiences that you want to be hitting, which obviously that brings in more revenue.
Yeah, yeah. And that's I think that's a process that people don't really think about
Yeah.
much is their onboarding process. I know
Yep.
my good friend Uriah Guilford and I were talking yesterday, as a matter of fact, just about that. And one of the things that he's working on is just how we can tap into AI to help with that process. And
Hmm.
so being able to look at those different ways of doing that. So yeah, Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it is. It's definitely, I think it's the most important process that a practice can have. If you can
right.
optimize that, the rest we can deal with later. But if you can't bring in clients in the door, you don't have a practice.
Sure, sure. Well, Bree, I've got to be respectful of your time. What
Yeah.
sort of closing thoughts do you have for us today?
Really, my advice always is to lead with your gut and ask for help, even if you don't think you need it, because everyone deserves help, everyone needs help. And that is really what will differentiate a solo practitioner that's kind of struggling with profit and bringing in clients and someone that is really thriving in their
Hmm.
practice.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. And I know that's something that I wish I had done early on when I first got started is seek more help, trying to,
Same.
rather than trying to just bootstrap it all myself and trying to figure it out on my own. And
Yeah.
and also just the support that you get, the community you can build and that sort of thing is just
Yeah.
so important to to help you thrive and to
Yeah.
succeed along the way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bootstrapping is great up until a point, and then you really
Yes.
need to ask for help. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, Bree, tell folks how they can get in touch with you and just a little bit more about your business and what you do.
Yeah. So we, like I said in the beginning, we're an operations agency for mental health practices. So our services are really to support you in the day to day. We have operations assistants that can help with your day to day, make sure your processes like your client onboarding are running smoothly. We have an HR manager role that can help if you are scaling and bringing on clinicians. It can help you with your payroll, your onboarding, offboarding, all of that fun HR stuff that no one wants to do. And then
Right,
we have, if you are in that place where you're ready to step into a CEO role, step into a leadership role, and you need someone to cover the day to day, we've got fractional practice director services. That's perfect for you as well. I would love to offer your audience, Gordon, a 25% off our operations audit. It's a comprehensive
awesome.
audit of how you work, how your practice runs, the software you use, just basically an all-encompassing audit. And then from that, you get a 90-day action plan where you get step-by-step instructions on what to do to be able to get your business kind of honed in and get you in a place where you can grow or scale or whatever that looks like for you. So you can find me at heybosco.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then our website. And our website has some great resources on our blog, and we're hopefully by the end of the year going to be having a digital store up and running for people who are bootstrapping and want to DIY. And so there's going to be templates and all the fun stuff, workbooks and things like that on there. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary so people can get to that really easily. So, well, Bree, thanks again for being on the podcast. And folks, do check out those links. And Bree's a great person. So get in touch.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I appreciate it.